that if you are going to control any population for any length of time, you must have some measure of consent. It's exceedingly difficult to see how pure terrorism can function indefinitely. It can function for a fairly long time, but I think sooner or later you have to bring in an element of persuasion, an element of getting people to consent to what is happening to them. Well, it seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people actually to love their servitude. This is seems to me the ultimate in malevolent revolution, shall we say. And this is a problem which has interested me for many years, and about which I wrote 30 years ago a fable, The Brave New World, which is essentially the account of a society making use of all the devices at that time available, and some of the devices which I imagined to be possible, making use of them in order to, first of all, to standardize the population, to iron out inconvenient human differences, to create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system. And since then I have continued to be extremely interested in this problem, and I have noticed with increasing dismay that a number of the predictions which were purely fantastic when I made them 30 years ago have come true or seem in process of coming true.
What's up, guys? This is Dre with the YouTube channel Beyond Peril, and today we're going to take a look at this idea of the cult of climate change. And that was a clip from author of Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, giving a speech at Berkeley in 1962, and he was talking about how his book Brave New World was really a plan for scientific dictatorship. And I'm gonna talk about that more in a different video, because that's a big topic. But I thought it kind of went along with this idea of the cult of climate change, that he's kind of created an idea in the Brave New World where people are happy to live in this strange reality that normally people wouldn't be happy with. And this cult of climate change is doing the same thing. And I just want to read this article. I don't know exactly who it was written by, but let's just go into it. Global warming has become a religion. This is the opinion of Nobel Prize winning physicist Dr. Ivor Giver, Professor Richard Lindzen, and many others. Climate change alarmism has a surprising number of attributes of a medieval or even ancient religion. Nevertheless, real religions have some prerequisites, like a tradition spanning at least few generations. So the proper name for the climate alarmism is a cult. And these are the telltale attributes. Climate alarmists pretend to possess indisputable truths about the past, present, and future, from minute details of the paleoclimate to the world state 200 years in the future. Alarmists know everything. 2. The alarmist movement stubbornly refuses to debate its dogma, calling it, quote, settled science, and viciously attacking its critics. The attacks are not limited to name-calling, but include prohibiting scientific research that contradicts this dogma. Scientific figures within the movement call for criminal persecution of those who publicly disagree with the dogma, and in some cases, for those who do not follow it. Proposed punishment for heretics and infidels include prison and even death. And if you've been around listening to the media the last few years, you have heard politicians and others call for the imprisonment of people who deny the so-called climate science. Number 3, the alarmist movement has a formal doctrine-setting body, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which we talked about in the last video. The reports and summaries by this body are considered by the alarmists to be the main source of authority on all things related to climate, energy, and biological cycle, and consequently everything else. The cult followers, individuals, organizations, and even governments regularly quote these unholy texts and use them to justify their decisions. The alarmist movement has its own priest class, taxpayer-funded imposter climate scientists, having almost no real, i.e. independent of climate alarmism, scientific achievements. Frequently, they do not even have scientific degrees. The alarmists sincerely believe that only members of the priest class are capable of understanding and seriously discussing climate science. Physicists, biologists, meteorologists, engineers, mathematicians, and other outsiders need not apply. It is worth noting that this priest class was appointed by politicians, largely from developing countries, and is completely disconnected from the eminent scientists who founded climate change research at the peak of their scientific careers and produced the most results prior to 1985. All the eminent scientists who have publicly spoken on the topic since the early 90s strongly oppose climate alarmism and were attacked or defamed by the alarmists. The list of these skeptics and deniers include Freeman Dyson, William Nierenberg, Frederick Seitz, Richard Lenzin, Fred Singer, and Roger Revelle. None of the founders of climate change research support the alarmism. An anti-alarmist Oregon petition has been signed by more than 31,000 experts, including more than 9,000 PhDs. And we talked about that in an earlier video. The climate change cult appears to worship the computer models that its members built with their own hands, literally man-made idols. Needless to say, much of the content of IPCC texts comes from these computer models. Number 6, the alarmists deny, ignore, or distort elementary scientific facts, some of which should be known even to kids. Photosynthesis. Plants grow by converting atmospheric CO2 into biomass. Significant parts of the world agriculture output are due to additional CO2 fertilization. The Archimedes principle, melting of Arctic ice, cannot increase the sea level because Arctic ice floats in water. Sunspots and the effect of solar activity changes. Number 7, the alarmists appeal to medieval science errors. These errors can be described as beliefs that nature has existed forever in some unchanged state. The inability of a common man or medieval scientist to observe such changes was the cause of these beliefs. The alarmists revive these errors by denying, ignoring, or underestimating natural climate change. Evolution, including species disappearance and adaptation, higher CO2 levels in the geological past, natural sea level increases in the current interglacial period, tectonic movement, the complex trajectory of Earth's motion around the sun, and the astronomic observations of stars similar to the sun. Number 8. The alarmists have created and spread climate mythology, sometimes intentionally modeled on archaic misbeliefs that many alarmists attributed to religion. The common logical fallacy can be described as an appeal to everyday experiences, not applicable to the discussed natural processes. The flat earth fallacy, some examples. Incorrect association of CO2 with the warming because of the word greenhouse, the mother of the global warming scare. Most city dwellers only know that greenhouses are warm and contain elevated levels of CO2 and easily led to believe that CO2 causes warming. Most farmers also know that CO2 is added for fertilization and does not cause greenhouse warming. This is why states with many farmers like Oklahoma are skeptics of climate change, of the climate change cult, and states with many professors like Massachusetts are believers. Incorrect claim that allegedly anthropogenic global warming causes glacier melting or Antarctic ice sheet collapse. Ice cream does melt faster and in a warmer room, but glaciers and ice sheets are influenced by totally different physical processes and a totally different time frame. See West Antarctic Glacier likely melting from geothermal heat, and the Arctic is especially sensitive to black carbon emissions. And it's true, even NASA put out a report stating that Arctic ice was melting because there is essentially a volcano under it. Incorrect claim that global warming causes droughts. Droughts are popularly associated with high temperatures but not caused by them. See, weaker solar activity means colder, and colder also means drier. False attribution of wildfires. New Orleans devastation from Hurricane Katrina, current California water shortages, and various disasters to global warming. These disasters are caused by environmentalist politics, not by global warming. Hurricane Katrina was only Category 3 upon landfall. New Orleans was supposed to withstand all hurricanes up to the highest Category 5, but the required barriers were not built because of the resistance by environmentalists. Time scale confusion. Processes that take hundreds of years are described as if they happen overnight. Number 9. Like an established religion, the climate change cult has its own start of the time, usually 1880, sometimes the 1880s, which is allegedly the beginning of instrumental temperature records. Number 10. The climate change cult has its own eschatology, calamities, catastrophes, and the end of the world caused by global warming. To avoid this horrible end, we have to repent, i.e. accept the climate change cult dogma, stop sinning, releasing CO2, and generously pay whomever the IPCC or UNFCCC will tell us to pay. The climate change cult calls its dogma science, but fails to make any scientific, i.e. non-trivial and testable statements. For example, climate change is real is a trivial statement. The statements about temperatures in 2100 are not practically testable. When alarmists were making testable statements, such as the infamous 1988 James Hansen testimony before Congress and early IPCC reports, they were proven to be incorrect. The climate change cult spreads belief in weather cooking. See excellent presentation by Sally Baliunas, recorded in 2008, before the weather cooking accusation became common again in the second decade of this century. Number 13, the climate change cult seeks and actually exerts control over governments. Even worse, it provokes international conflict over hot air, mythical country quotas to release carbon dioxide. To add to the above, the climate change cult has survived multiple exposures of its frauds, something that a normal fraud cannot survive. Nevertheless, many cults involve fraud, and even true believers are not against profiting from their position in their cult. The climate change cult has been elevated by the Obama administration into state religion. Both the White House and NASA appear to have converted to this cult. Alright, so obviously this was written a little while ago while Obama was still president. President Trump doesn't seem to buy into the climate change idea, global warming caused by man. But anyway, you will notice a reoccurring theme in here where they just want to exert control over the actions of human beings, what we are allowed to eat, what we are allowed to drive, what we are allowed, everything. They want to essentially implement these controls. And if you listen to the Aldous Huxley talk, he is talking about Brave New World coming into existence in real life. And they essentially need people to buy into this willingly, which is what you see happening with this idea of climate change and all the policies they want to enact to exert control over the people. And there's a lot more to this. I mean, this is just a kind of a summary overview that doesn't even really begin to cover it. And in the future, I want to talk about this more. This idea that Aldous Huxley had with his soma and this connection that we will see with climate activism and psychedelics. It's going to be pretty interesting, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, God bless, and thanks for watching.